Hello everyone, this is Bob and Threadbare, and welcome back to Threadbare Reviews. Today's topic is the suggestion of patron Shaken. I recently mentioned that I got a subscription to Disney Plus for Christmas, and so the next few reviews are going to involve a lot of Disney properties. Today's topic will get things started with Treasure Planet, an animated movie that first came out in 2002. The story about the story. The late 90s and early aughts were the twilight years of the Disney animation renaissance. After The Lion King came out in 1994, Disney's animated films were getting steadily less popular as they started relying more on played-out formulas, and they found themselves competing with CGI films coming from Pixar and DreamWorks. And never mind that Pixar always worked hand-in-hand with Disney, they were still in competition with Disney's animation studio. Treasure Planet was something of the nadir of Disney animation in this period. It received a big budget and a big marketing push, but it failed to make back that budget at the box office. In total, it was $140 million spent, and only $110 million made back, and that includes the international market. There was no real harbinger of doom in the production of the film. The vocal cast includes Joseph Gordon-Levitt as the protagonist Jim Hawkins, along with David Hyde Pierce, Emma Thompson, Martin Short, and even a short intro by Tony Jay, who was also the voice of Claude Frollo in Hunchback of Notre Dame. The film was an adaptation of Treasure Island, a book which already had a number of successful adaptations, including the first live-action feature film Disney ever made. The animation uses a combination of traditional 2D hand-drawn art and 3D computer-rendered backgrounds, and that allowed the film to make use of tracking shots and crane shots that would have been impossibly expensive with 2D backgrounds. And then behind the helm you had Ron Clements and John Musker, two veterans of Disney's animation studio who had worked on some of their biggest successes. Sadly though, as I mentioned earlier, Treasure Planet bombed at the box office. Disney would continue to make animated films throughout the rest of the decade, but it wouldn't be until Tangled in 2010 and particularly Frozen in 2013 that the studio would really make a comeback in terms of popularity. So what happened? What's wrong with the film? Well, let's find out. The review. Jim Hawkins is a brash adolescent living on the quiet planet Montresor with his long-suffering mother Sarah. Sarah runs an inn and tavern, but one day a dying sailor washes ashore and gives Jim a strange map sphere just before he dies. A band of pirates soon turns up searching for the map, and while Jim, Sarah, and their long-term guest Dr. Doppler get away, the tavern burns to the ground. However, Doppler sees an opportunity in the map, and he hires a ship and crew to find the buried treasure it promises to uncover. Unfortunately, Doppler is completely new at this whole exploration thing, and so he hires a good captain and a first mate, but a sketchy crew, in particular, a cyborg cook named John Silver. But despite his suspicious actions, Jim and John Silver start to bond during the voyage, and Silver ends up becoming a father figure to the fatherless Jim. But that doesn't stop him from mutinying once Jim discovers the plot, and then Jim, Doppler, and Captain Smollett escape in a landing skiff just as they get to the planet they're looking for. They meet a robot named Benjamin once they get there, people get captured and escape, the treasure gets discovered and then lost for good, and in the end the good guys and maybe half the pirate crew escape the exploding planet and make it safely back home. Or to prison, in some cases. So like I said in the first section, there's nothing to complain about as far as the visuals go. The CGI blends seamlessly with the 2D character art, and the animators take no shortcuts. Instead, they make full use of the science fiction setting to show things like exploding stars, rapidly transforming robot arms, and a mascot character whose whole gimmick is floating around and turning into various people and objects. But that's where the unqualified praise ends. Musically, Treasure Planet has a very good main theme, but maybe I'm just used to the more subtle approach of modern films. That one good theme gets used a lot throughout the movie, and it's always on full blast whenever it appears. I get that dramatic moments should come with dramatic music, but if those moments aren't quite as dramatic as the theme, that theme comes off more as melodramatic. I also have some issues with the setting. Now, I have no trouble with settings that mix anachronistic ships with outer space, Spelljammer's basically the same thing, and it's still my favorite Dungeons & Dragons setting. But while the animators make full use of the unique setting, the story doesn't. The story feels like it's just, hey, look everyone, it's Treasure Island, but it's in space! Woo! John Silver's a cyborg instead of having a peg leg. They're skirting a supernova instead of a storm. The maroon survivor is a crazy robot played by Martin Short. One of the crewmates is a fart joke. It's space! And so while there's plenty of space stuff to be had in the film, it comes off less as an integral part of the story and more as a gimmick. Treasure Planet takes a few liberties adapting the source material, but if you ask me, it should have taken more liberties. On the other hand, one thing the movie takes from the book that I fully appreciated is the relationship between Jim and John Silver. In both the book and the movie, Silver acts as a father figure to Jim, even though he eventually betrays Jim and mutinies against the officers. Treasure Planet leans more into this relationship than the book does, and it really forms a solid emotional core for the film. But another issue I had was with the comic relief. The two main comedy sources are Morph, the shape-shifting pet, and Benjamin, the mad robot. But Morph is a lot, and Benjamin is a lot, and together they are too much. Disney films from the Renaissance period tend to have more than one comic relief character, but usually the comics have moments when they get serious, or else they back away from serious situations. And yet Morph and Benjamin are always on, and always present, and so characters that should be breaking tension are instead preventing tension from building. Ultimately, Treasure Planet is, at least for me, one of the more skippable movies in the Disney animation canon. It's not that the film is bad per se, but there are better Treasure Island adaptations out there, and there are better space opera films out there. And in all honesty, you're better off watching one of those rather than Treasure Planet. The analysis. Treasure Planet is about the search for treasure, both literal treasure and metaphorical treasure. There are three characters who are primarily driving the plot: Jim, Silver, and Doppler. All three of them set out to find a hidden pirate treasure, and all three of them return with something of value. And while it's never what they were looking for, what they find is much more important to them than any pile of coins. Jim is looking for validation. He's failing at school, but he's an excellent mechanic and has superb reflexes. However, neither his mother nor the local authorities seem to value these traits. So he goes on the voyage to try and prove his worth, and not only does he get chances to use his skills, he is praised by John Silver, who props him up when he's feeling down and takes pride in his accomplishments. So, while Jim doesn't get much money, he does get a father figure. For his part, Silver is looking for what he believes is his fair share of the pirate loot. But that bond he forges with Jim goes both ways, and he starts looking out for Jim even when it puts him at a disadvantage or upsets his pirate crew. In the end, he has a chance to choose between the treasure or Jim's life, and he chooses Jim. So while Silver doesn't get much money either, he does get a son. Then there's Doppler. Doppler doesn't need to prove himself, and he doesn't need the pirate gold, but what he does want is the fame that comes from finding a long-lost treasure hoard. However, during the voyage, he finds himself flirting with and then falling for the female captain. And while at first he comes off as a landlubber with no knowledge of sailing or combat, he gets several chances to act heroically, particularly in front of the captain. So while Doppler doesn't return with too much to show for all of the time and money he spent, he does earn the admiration of one very important person. Thanks for joining me again for today's Threadbare review, and I hope I'll see you next time. Until then, please remember to like, share, and subscribe, and if you have a little extra money to spare, you can support me on Patreon. Link in the description.